Good morning. Today is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. It's intriguing that the Mishkan, the sanctuary, about which we have been studying over a period of 5 weeks, and is such a focal point for the Jewish people during the 40 years in the desert, and then 400 years in Israel, and then the Beit HaMikdash, another 400 years, and then the Second Temple, another 400 years. And it's so important, and it's such a focal point, and we know that, for example, 3 times a year, every Jewish person had a mitzvah to come to see it, to come to Jerusalem and to come to see the Beit HaMikdash. And nonetheless, so much of it was hidden from view. If you were not one of the Kohanim who was serving on duty on that day, and the Kohanim were divided into groups, and each group had 2 weeks, plus everybody served on the 3 festivals because so many people came. But if you were not one of the Kohanim serving in the groups, you never ever saw the inside of the building. So you never ever saw the menorah, or the shulchan, the table, or the mizbeach hazav, the golden altar on which incense were offered. You never saw the inside of this room where the walls were made of columns that were covered in gold. You never saw that. No one ever saw that, except for the Kohen who was on duty. And unless you were the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, you never ever saw the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. No one saw it, except the Kohen Gadol, and then only on Yom Kippur. So if you're a Levi or a Kohen, or women or children, they never saw any of this. And even in the outer courtyard, it was limited where people could stand. If you were not a Kohen or a Levi, you could not stand in the courtyard in the area between the Mizbeach, the altar, and the building. That means, again, unless you're a Kohen, you would never be able to touch the kior, the basin that was used to wash the hands and feet of the Kohanim, because it was in between the altar and the building, and the Heichal, the Mizbeach and the Heichal. So much of it was hidden. And we've discussed this before, even what was visible was covered and hidden. For example, the entire outer appearance of the building, which was the columns that were connected one to the other, and they were covered with gold, and they were covered with a curtain. So if you were not a Kohen and you came to the Mishkan, you did not see any gold, not one piece of gold anywhere, for all the gold that was there. We've discussed this before. So much was hidden that what is visible takes on added significance. And there is something in our Torah portion that was visible. When the Jewish people came 3 times a year to Jerusalem, to the Beit HaMikdash, the Talmud tells us, Magvian oso la'oli ragolim umaran bo lechem. They showed them when the people would come on a pilgrimage for 3 times a year, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and they would come to Jerusalem, and they would come to the Beit HaMikdash. Of course, they're standing outside in the courtyard. They're seeing very little, but the Kohen would bring out to them from inside the building, into which they could never go, would bring out to them the Lechem HaPanim, the loaves of bread, literally the bread of faces. v'omrim lehem, and the Kohen would bring out the loaves of bread and show it to them, and say to them, Ru'u chibaschem lifnei hamakom. See how dear you are to God. See how cherished you are to God. Look at these loaves of bread and see how cherished and dear and loving God is of you. The 12 loaves of bread, of course, the Lechem HaPanim, were 12 loaves of bread that were placed on the shulchan, the table that was inside the heichal, inside the building. So you never saw that. Unless you were a Kohen, you never ever saw this shulchan, this table. But there were 12 loaves of bread called the Lechem HaPanim. And they were placed on this table made of gold, the shulchan, in 2 stacks, a stack of 6 loaves and a stack of 6 loaves, the 12 loaves representing the 12 tribes, the entire Jewish people. And these 12 loaves of bread were baked every Friday, and they were placed on the shulchan on Shabbos, and the old loaves were taken off. Our sages tell us that there was a miracle that occurred in the Beit HaMikdash, that when they took off the loaves of bread, remember they've been sitting on the table for a week. I don't know what bread looks like in your house when it's been sitting outside for a week, but this was still warm, as if it had just come out of the oven. And it was divided and eaten by the Kohanim who were on duty on that Shabbos. Now, there's one more factor, which is very, very strange, and that is the shape of these loaves of bread. Now, what I've done is, I've made a model for you. Now, this is not the Lechem HaPanim. It's not the right recipe. It's not baked in the right form. It's not the right size. Nothing about this. I took a loaf of bread and I carved it just to be able to show you the shape. So the loaf of bread was baked in this shape. It's a very strange shape for a loaf of bread. And there were special molds that they put the dough into so that it would end up with this shape. And there are a number of opinions. I've given you the most widely accepted opinion about the shape. The Talmud has a couple of other suggestions of slight differences. But generally, the Talmud explains that the height is supposed to equal the width. Now, I didn't really make it exactly to scale, so it should have been a little higher. The height is supposed to be equal to the width. But you see how it's baked in this kind of a U shape, 3-dimensional U shape. That's the shape that it was baked in. It's strange for a loaf of bread. I don't think you could go to a bakery today and find a loaf of bread that is baked in that shape. And the truth is, to prepare for today, I wanted just to find you a photo, an image. And I searched Google, I cannot find a single image that I thought accurately reflected the shape that the Talmud describes. So I made it myself. I'm planning to have the rest of this for breakfast. Why was it shaped like this? The classic answer to this question is given by Rabbi Hirsch. Remember that there were 12 of these, 12 loaves, 2 stacks, a stack of 6, so that one of these rested on the next. So they're stacked up like this. And the idea is, according to Rabbi Hirsch, that an equal amount of the width is the height, so that an equal amount forms the base, and the equal amount of that forms the base for the next loaf. Each loaf is meant to rest on the one below it. It's meant to be stackable. In other words, each loaf serves itself and serves the one above it, and is being served by the one below it. The shulchan, the table, inside the Mishkan, is meant to represent the source of the physical and material comfort of the Jewish people. The menorah, opposite, is meant to represent the source of the spiritual strength of the Jewish people. But the shulchan, with the 12 loaves of bread, the Lechem HaPanim, and by the way, I'm sorry, I didn't say this. It's called Lechem HaPanim, literally means the bread with faces, because there's a piece here, and it's facing this piece. So these two pieces face each other. That's why it's a loaf of faces. That's why it's called that. But the shulchan is meant to be the source of physical and material comfort. And listen, please, to how Rabbi Hirsch explains this. Due to this shape, each loaf offered as much to carry the next loaf as it took up with its base. And this expresses that the condition of all prosperity, which eliminates all egoism and demands the most fraternal devotion, that everyone should acquire and possess as much for the other as for themselves. Devote as much to our neighbor as to the fullness of our own table. And this is what was shown to the Oli Regalim. Every Jewish person would come to the Beit HaMikdash on Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. By the way, this was made in accordance with the rules of matzah, so it was there on Pesach as well. And the people would come, and there's very little that they would see. They wouldn't see the Aron, they wouldn't see the menorah, a lot that they wouldn't see. But the Kohen would take the loaf out and show them and see. Do you want to see the source of your national comfort? Do you want to see how it is that God supports you and gives you plenty, and that you have enough and that you have enough to enjoy? Do you want to see what the source of that is? It's this Lechem HaPanim, it's this loaf of bread. You must come to the Beis HaMikdash 3 times a year to see this, to remember this, that you will be wealthy. You will have enough to the extent that you share with your fellow. That's the source. Again, the words of the Talmud, Magbian oso la'ole regalim, the Kohen would bring it out from inside, would bring it out to show the people this loaf of bread, umaran lo lechem, and show them lechem, and say to them, Ru'u chibaskem livnei hamakom. See what makes you dear in the eyes of God. If you spend as much effort to make sure that your fellow has as you make sure that you have, that will be the source of your comfort. That will be the source of your plenty. And that's why it was brought out to show them. And that's why the Kohanim would eat it on Shabbos. Do you want to see the source of the benefit of what you've done all week? I worked all week. I earned all week. Why? Why do I work so hard to earn a paycheck? Why do I work so hard to be able to receive money in exchange for the work that I do. Why do I work so hard during the week? Shabbos is the time for me to reflect. For what purpose have I spent the last 6 days accumulating things and objects and food? Shabbos is the time to reflect. The reason I accumulated all this is to share it. That's why I have it. That's why I worked hard for it, to share it. And that will be the source of why Hashem decides that I should have it, because I'm sharing it. I will suggest one step further, that we do the same thing with Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos. We have the custom that at the 3 Shabbos meals, we don't have 1 loaf of bread. We have 2 loaves of bread. Lechem Mishnah, 2 loaves of bread. Okay, the clear connection to that is because of the manna. We spoke about this before. A double portion fell on Friday, said they would have enough for Friday and for Shabbos, to teach us that you have to prepare on Friday for Shabbos and you can't do the work on Shabbos. Yes, that's true. But another reason that I have 2 loaves when I start a meal on Shabbos, for my family, I need 1 loaf. But because whenever I enjoy something, I have a 2nd loaf to share with others. And that's why I need to. The image of the Lechem HaPanim, this strange detail of the shape of these loaves of bread, teaches us one of the most foundational, fundamental messages of Judaism. The extent to which I will enjoy what I have in this world is the extent to which I share what I have with others. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.